Pass your phone to the right. Text the next love goodbye. It's another cycle song. Flowers on the side of the road, traveling beside each other. No one else to dance on their own. Oh, so take my hand and lose yourself.
Greetings? Oh, okay.
You ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of Plato in Hollywood, a massively nerdy podcast where we ponder the intersections of philosophy and film. We are your hosts, Naomi Nekrasov.
And Gwyn, Bakken.
A little bit about us and why we're starting this show. I am Naomi. I am a film student in college. I've always loved movies and literature all my life, and I grew up in a very deep-thinking family. I love thinking about trends in media, deeper meanings and symbolism in movies, as well as just fun aesthetic trends in fashion, interior design, photography, etc. I am a writer and a filmmaker, but I also love crafting, costume design, sewing, origami, poetry, dance, sitting outside on my patio in the sun and pretending to be a lizard, and probably, last but not least, I love frogs.
That's so true.
Gwyn?
I'm Gwyn. I'm currently studying English right now. I have an associate's degree in English, and that could potentially transfer into a 4-year degree. We're going to see where that goes. I love classic literature. I love reading about themes and reading deep into symbolism and the underlying meaning behind like all of those classic stories that you know and love. And I also love applying that to movies as well, and the themes and stuff that get passed down from previous generations of storytellers to the modern age.
Oh, yeah.
I also love crafting. I'm a big scrapbooker. I also love dancing. I like line dancing and swing dancing, just a little bit yeehaw for the laughs. So that's a bit about me.
Wonderful. So me and Gwyn have been friends for about 9 years, going on 10. Crazy. Yeah. We've always shared a lot of the same nerdy passions, as you can see, and we often find ourselves discussing these philosophical and theological implications of film and literature we consume, and as well as comment on the visual aesthetic choices of the filmmakers. Thusly, we thought it would be a nice idea to share our musings with the world, and this podcast was born. Plato in Hollywood, the intersection of philosophy and film.
Every episode, we're going to discuss a topic and then enjoy a special treat or ice cream while giving you all the movie recommendations of the week.
Or unrecommendations.
Or unrecommendations. So basically, we'll just hate on movies, and then
Wonderful.
Discuss a fashion, interior design choice, or aesthetic trend that we like or don't like. At the end, we're going to review the aforementioned ice cream flavor or pastry flavor, and then bid you all adieu.
So without further ado, let's jump into our first topic.
All right, welcome to the Academy, y'all. Today, that's basically the section where we talk about the musings of the hour. Today we're going to intelligent stuff. Let's go. Today we're going to be talking about the effect that recent film and media has had on modern novel writing. I think this got started by just reading newer publications and mostly the young adult fiction area and seeing how differently they're written than the classics, and how a lot of them are more geared towards visual descriptors and very dynamic moments as opposed to actual storytelling and themes and characterization of a plot, if that makes sense. Those are a lot of jumbled words that me as a amateur and not a writer have decided to use, but yeah. Those are the musings of the hour. Naomi, you had some good points on this earlier today.
Yeah, I think a lot of what this boils down to is almost an over-exaggeration of the show don't tell principle, because I think a lot of these modern YA books, a lot of them are written in first-person present tense. It's very immediate, very you can see it just being a movie, basically. It's just play by play, action, with not a lot of, like, lapses in time, I guess. So a lot of it is very much written like a movie script, but just with more. It's just more.
Just more.
You know.
Except you can say stuff
Right.
and as much as you want. No time limit, honestly.
Yeah, there's no time limit. Like, you know, in screenwriting is supposed to be very, you know, concise. You know, you want to be as specific as possible with as few words as possible. So, you know, you use very vivid, like, action verbs, just a few words to describe what a character looks like, and taking that very visual focus into novel writing, you have, like,
His
a lot
crystal
more
blue eyes stared directly into my soul, and you're like, are you
Exactly.
sure?
There's, you know, there's just a lot more room for that description, which can be great, but it's often just a lot. It's a lot of visual description with no, obviously you can't see it, so it tends to drag out a lot.
It's not telling you anything about the character. I was, obviously, as someone who's studying to be an editor, I'm trying to help people refine their, like, work. And I was reading some, like writer's advice blog, and they said, like, here's different ways that you can describe, like, a camera lens, like, zoom in your book. And I'm like, no, that should never be your point. You are omniscient as the reader. Like, sure, the narrator could be first person, third person, whatever, but you shouldn't be trying to describe, like, an actual visual effect in a book. You should be trying to convey an emotion or a feeling using the words available to you.
Totally, yeah. Which I think is why I mentioned the show Don't Tell thing, because it's like they're trying so hard to not tell us the plot that they're showing literally everything possible, and it's just so much. Like, I'm reading, like, a YA fantasy novel, and it's like 432 pages of mostly visual descriptions, and then it's got, like, characters' inner monologues, which is something that's not allowed in screenwriting. Like, you're not allowed to say what the characters are thinking and feeling. So it's basically in these new novels, it's like, you know, it's all visuals, and then it's like, oh, well, we don't have the boundary that screenwriting does of not being able to say what the character's feeling, so let's just put that in at all possible opportunities. And so I think it ends up being actually less nuanced.
Yeah, it's an unholy child of two extremes.
Right.
Like an inner monologue and then, like, a look at the world.
Yeah, which I get. What do you think about, like how, if you think of, like, a classic work of literature, like, when characters are introduced or, like, action is played out, like, how do you think it was different, like, I would say before 1950? Like, how do you think that writing was different that actually made it more nuanced, and it was more like a, you know, a discovery as opposed to just being told everything that's happening?
I think that a lot of it was less about physical, like, appearance, like someone entering the scene of, like, a theater, and more about kind of the energy that they brought with them. So I feel like you would hear a lot of, like, he was, like, a wizened old man who, like, looked like he carried the world on his shoulders, or she was a joyous young girl who, like, leaped gaily about, and, like, maybe don't use that language for if you can help it, because it's a lot of words, but there was definitely, I feel like, more descriptions of the type of person that they were, which just sort of lent itself to a very specific archetype, and you could kind of imagine what they looked like without saying, like, she was a beautiful little child with rosy cheeks and had a bob in her hair and a floral dress and things on her shoes. And unless you're going specifically for, like, a list of attributes for, like, a comedic or, like, fun purpose, having a list of attributes and expecting people to take it, like, super seriously is probably not gonna work. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember hearing about Jay Gatsby being, like, a mysterious figure on the end of a pier with, like, sort of a sadness that hung around him. And so you're kind of being introduced to characters more as the way that people experience them and less as like how they looked if you were to see them on a two-dimensional flat screen.
Totally, yeah. I mean, if I think about really any book that's been written in the last like 10 years, it almost feels illegal to not introduce a character and have a list of like their hair color, their eye color, and what they're wearing. Like it feels almost like that's not allowed anymore, to like allow the readers to fill in those visual details and just focus on the, you know, what is the point of the character in the story. So I think what you said is so true. Like, yeah, you're missing a lot of the like the substance, like the soul of the characters when you focus so much on just like
Absolutely.
You know, what they look like.
What they look like. And then there's also, I feel like in this sort of young adult novels heavily influenced by what type of movie they would be made into if they ever were to become like a screenplay or be adapted into a film. I feel like that has sort of leaked into the plot in a lot of ways. And when I say that, I mean it's like almost made, it's like shallow enough to be adapted almost flawlessly, which I don't always like. In like, sure, lots of little arcs are difficult for a reader to keep up with. Sure, lots of different themes and like a tangled web are not maybe like super kind to whoever's going to be reading your novel. But there's also this element of you have to be aware that the reader sometimes needs to be able to figure out stuff on their own, and not everything needs to be crystal clear and perfect, and like you can't bother missing any details, because sometimes you just have to trust the reader to be smart and give them enough to be interested and intrigued and use their brains, but not necessarily be like, here's all my cards, everything's on the table, here you go, adapt it into a movie.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I think... Oh, I lost my thought.
Dude, that's so real.
I forgore.
She forgore.
Oh, I guess I was thinking, like, I think in older classic works of fiction, like, I feel like the author would spend even more time on, like, the lore and, like, the backstory of people that, like, I don't think people have as much patience for that necessarily anymore. But if you think of, like, you know, classics like Pride and Prejudice or like The Tale of Two Cities or like Les Miserables, like it's just so full of...
I've been trying to avoid saying Les Miserables when I bring up like, maybe don't do too much.
Right, because Les Mis is notorious for having like way too much like setting and backstory description and like historical context. It's almost the opposite of like, you know, the extreme present tense detail. It's like all this past tense, you know, philosophical, like the author's just coming out and just telling you what the theme of the book is for like 100 pages.
You're like, whoa.
It's a lot. But like, I think people appreciated that stuff because it wasn't forced to be always this like visceral present tense movie feeling. Like authors allowed their books to be a little slower and really like explore, you know, where did these characters come from, and ultimately like why should we care about them, and why do they matter? Because I think, again, like a lot of modern novels, and I'm trying to like come up with examples other than the book that I'm reading right now, which I cannot say the title of. But, you know, I think even stuff like The Hunger Games.
The Hunger Games
like
is a good concept, but not easy to read necessarily, and just that it's like sort of the writing style isn't necessarily as engaging as the actual content.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So, yeah, I feel like in books there should be just more space for like that explanation piece that people so often shy away from now. Like I feel like almost in modern books it's like they throw out a like bit of lore about a character as if it's like illegal. Like, oh, we got to make this one sentence or else we're just going to lose the reader's attention.
It feels
entirely.
like a pendulum swing, like an overreaction from like really wordy, depthy novels, and then you got these movies where you can figure out a lot about a character in like a 25-second flashback, and you're like, oh, we got to do that too. So it feels like kind of like a maybe like an overcorrection where there is a happy medium. There is a time and a place for exposition. Maybe don't make that your entire book, but there is an element to like you said earlier, knowing why your characters are there and why you should care about them. Yeah, those two things, I think those are like probably shallow reasons, but as a book reader, those are the most important things that I look for when I'm trying to find a good new thing to read to keep me from boredom. So yeah, those are my biggest grievances right now. Must see or else.
I would like to share with you a very special movie or book recommendation for this week, and Gwen will be sharing an unrecommendation or something to never, ever, ever watch or read.
Never, ever, ever.
Ever. Nope. All right, let's dive into it. Okay. On our must see or else section for today, my recommendation for y'all to watch is the new mini series called Shogun. It is a 10-episode drama that just came out in 2024. And it basically centers around the leaders of Japan in the, I think, late 1700s, I believe. And they're basically fighting over the title of shogun, and Japan is also kind of being infiltrated by Portuguese missionaries who are claiming to just be missionaries, but they're actually basically trying to take over. Yeah, so it's very cinematic. It's very intense. There's lots of great characterization. It's wonderfully written. It's beautifully shot. And yeah, there's definitely some pretty intense violence, which I was forewarned about. So, but yeah, I would recommend anyone who enjoys, especially like historical dramas, historical fiction, and it's just a pretty cool depiction of the Japanese culture as well. So I've really been enjoying that. I've only watched 2 episodes so far, but I'm really excited for the rest of the season. I've heard really good things. So if you want to check out Shogun, it's streaming on Hulu, YouTube TV, and also Disney Plus as well. So go check it out, guys. All right, and now we have a very special unrecommendation from Gwen. Take it away.
All right, this is my unrecommendation. This is going to be controversial. This is also not a new thing.
I don't know what's coming.
This is also, I'm using this to just personally vent my issues with a specific, thing. My unrecommendation is the Bee Movie. I literally hate it so much. Don't watch it. It's creepy and weird, and I don't like the romantic tension between a literal insect and a human woman. That movie scarred me for life. If you've seen it already, which you probably have, it's iconic. It's a staple in culture. I'm just taking this opportunity to hate on it publicly. So there's that.
Fair enough.
Don't watch it. Don't give them the satisfaction.
I actually haven't watched it, so I guess I've already taken your advice.
Let's go. Don't continue watching it.
It sounds like a great plan. Welcome to the cool stuff portion of the podcast, where we talk about some cool trends in aesthetic aesthetically pleasing things.
Are we talking today? We're just talking about aesthetics, like specifically, and not like items within a certain trend.
Right. This is more of like a Pinterest trend, if you will.
A Pinterest trend? I'd say, yeah.
That's a little cringe,
right.
but you know.
I feel like we should put a trigger warning for cringe on this, because the word like fill in the blank core or like
it's gonna be on here a lot. I'm so
man.
sorry. Yeah, so today we're gonna be talking about contrasting two aesthetics, Gothic Western and Prairie Core. So me and Gwen have collectively decided that the summer is cowgirl summer for
Yeehaw.
no specific reason. So kind of a subset of cowgirl summer is this vibe called Western Gothic, and it involves, I would say, a lot of like legends, you know, kind of like spooky campfire stories type of vibes. I think some of it is probably legitimate, like cryptids and, you know, kind of mythological lore that came from, you know, the cowboy time period in the Wild West in the 1800s. So yeah, in fashion specifically, it involves a lot of basically combining like goth and like cowboy almost.
It's
like
Western,
a lot of,
not to be confused with country. I feel like that's
right,
sort of a different
Western.
vibe.
So like vests with like interesting patterns. I think a lot of like leather, like orange, purple, black.
Things you
sometimes
would
some
find like in nature
blue.
on the frontier, sort of.
Yeah, very very neutral tones. Definitely a lot of, I would say, like skulls imagery is pretty common.
Yeah. There's also a lot of like, I feel like Native American influence as well. So like beaded jewelry,
totally.
feathers, beads, all that jazz. Very, very lovely to look at. Very visually pleasing.
Oh yes. Yes, so we discovered that another subset of cowgirl summer is prairie core. So can you tell us a little bit about what that might look like?
Oh my gosh, I didn't know this was a thing until I was like, what's a combination between our gothic western vibe and like cottage core? And Naomi says, oh, that's prairie core. I've seen that before. And it's very much like sort of like what my mom likes, which is like modern farmhouse. But I feel like it's a little bit more vintage, a little bit more rustic, in that there's a lot of like summer dresses, a lot of like home cooked meals. We've got baskets of wildflowers, but we have also got like a little bit of a more like tougher side, so a little bit dirty. There's dirt everywhere. You've got dirt on flower petals. You've got
Work boots.
Barbed wire, sort of bringing that element of like someone who would have been living, I guess, where I just was in Iowa, sort of this same period as like cowboy time period, like the 1800s, but we're talking more like the plains, the prairie, people who are living and traveling over like broad spaces. So it's like
totally
beautiful and it's lovely and it's lighthearted, but there's also kind of an edgy, rustic, hard work feel to it that I really think is quite beautiful.
Totally, yeah. And that makes sense. That I think the more Western is more like geared towards like the desert mesas type of landscape, as opposed to like the plains and prairie, obviously. Hence the name.
Prairie core.
Amazing.
Yeah. And I feel like personally, just when it comes to fashion, I've been really liking the gothic western, because there's so much you can do with it. You can do like beaded jewelry, or like you're making a vest right now, which I think is absolutely gorgeous. The most beautiful fabric, boots. But then I feel like prairie core also tends to be a little bit more like feminine, if you're feeling very like you want to connect to a more feminine side of you. You want to be like hardworking and get dirty, but you also want to look kind of like soft and approachable and almost like maternal. I feel like you're gonna kind of lean more towards like the plains, that softness that you see in like the grasses and the flowers.
Yeah, I think maybe in general, because like this is something that you and I have been interested in, but like I'm seeing this type of aesthetic just kind of across the board, like in stores and even in movies, you know, with the new Outer Range TV show. And
I literally love that show so much, but it
you know, our
breaks my
favorite
heart.
artist, Lord Huron.
Let's go.
We love it. I think
Quite the
it kind of,
entertainer.
obviously, you know, specifically in American fashion, I think it, you know, kind of speaks to like just going back in history a little bit and like just kind of enjoying like a deeper like sense of self that kind of, I guess, going back to the roots a little bit historically.
Oh, you're right to say that. Yeah.
Because I think that's been important to people as kind of like an identity sort of thing, just with everything that's going on in the world. So, you know, it can still be very modern and lots of like pops of color and very fun, but it's just not as like, it's not like, you know, 2024 raw, like
Raw.
I don't know, it's something
Sneakers,
else.
let's go.
It's like, it's something slightly transcendent, but still very grounded in this, like, you know, rustic, like, hard-working type of feel, so.
I feel like it reaches, like you just said, I wouldn't have thought of that if you hadn't have pointed it out, but, like, you hear a lot of, like, Americans have no culture type thing. I think it's sort of a reaction to that of, like, no, we have it. We've just gotten so, like, caught up in the new thing. And, like you said, this is kind of a look back at what the culture is and, like, what's important to us as a people group, because you see you've got those Native American influences, you've got the pioneers over the prairie, you've got cowboys from Mexico. It's just a melting pot, but there is a culture to be found like in that.
Yeah, it was really the beginning of the melting pot of all the different cultures coming here. So I think people are kind of enjoying that international feel almost, but like just a little bit further into the past. It's just fun.
Kind of specific to the region.
Yeah. Something
that's cool to be connected to.
All right, so typically on the inside scoop portion, we'll have a new and exciting ice cream flavor. But today we're actually trying a pastry. Would you like to tell us a little bit about the pastry that you brought in for us, Gwen?
All right, so I just got home from Pella, Iowa, which is my mom's hometown, and it's like a little Dutch town, sort of. All the buildings have to be up to code by a certain like aesthetic standard. It's got these bricked paved streets. It's super duper fun. I love it there. And I brought back some Dutch letters, which are little like, I guess you would say they're like a pastry, like crust rolled around some almond paste and like sugar filling in the middle. It's super good. It's basically, yeah, I would say it's sort of like a croissant, a very sweet croissant with sugar on the top and on the inside. And it's in the shape of an S. It's like a long rope with almond in the inside. Yeah, so that's what I brought today.
Huzzah! I'm so excited to try it. It looks amazing. We're going. It is time to rate our pastry of the day. On a scale of 1 to 10, how do we rate the S-shaped pastry?
The Dutch letter. I would give it obviously like a 7 or 8, just because it's so nostalgic. I grew up having these, and I love almond everything. Almond is my life, my dream. But that's also like a personal preference. It's very light and flaky, also, which I like. Carbs are my kryptonite.
That's very true. Same here. I guess to go with rating it for flavor, I would say I'd give it a solid 8 or 9.
That makes
because
me so happy to hear.
It is not like there's a substantial amount of filling. Like it's almost like eating a pie, but like it's just rolled up.
Like a pie, actually. They have a lot of fried
it's less
there.
messy. It's like rolled up. You know, the stuff is all inside, and it's not as dry as some pastries are. I really enjoy the sugar crust on the outside as well.
That's good.
It's pretty great. How do we rate it for usefulness?
For usefulness.
How versatile is this pastry?
I mean, it's crumbly enough, but you can carry it around. Like if you're at a street festival, like Tulip Time up in Pella, every the first weekend in May usually, you can carry these around. It's great. You don't need a bowl or anything. So I would say it's definitely up there in terms of usefulness.
Excellent. I'm trying to think. I'm just stealing this from the Friendship Onion. Aesthetics. That was the last category.
Oh, plagiarism. Oh, I think it's cute. I like it.
I think they're very cute. I want to know what the S stands for, though.
I think it... I'll get back to you on that, actually. I feel like it means something. I just don't know what it means.
All right. Good to know. Well, nerds, that's all we have for you today. Oh, wait, that was your line. I'm sorry. Here, you say it.
Well, nerds, that's all we have for you today.
Thanks so much for listening. If you're interested in listening to more content like this, let us know. Make sure to subscribe whenever we get this bad boy posted. Probably.
On all the things.
On all the things. So yeah, be on the lookout. And until next time,
Au revoir.
au revoir.
Wait, what?
Or au revoir. What did you say, bro?
I don't speak French. I don't know why you put the outro in French, my man.
I'm sorry.
Adios.
Adios, muchachos.